video on how to use the quadratic formula. So if you remember from class, we talked about the quadratic formula as a way to solve an equation. So if we have an equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, we can solve for x by using the formula x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of it over 2a. So in class we actually worked through this, and we took this equation and we rewrote it in vertex form, set it equal to 0, and then actually worked through all the steps to get to this formula. So if you look back in your notes, you should be able to see that. But now that we've created the formula, we can go ahead and use it. So our first question here is we want to determine the x-intercepts of a quadratic function using the quadratic formula. And the reason that we can use the quadratic formula, okay, is because if you have a parabola or anything really, and it passes through the x-axis, then we know that this point here would be, say, 0, 0, so our y is 0. And let's say this point over here was 4, 0, so once again, our y is 0. So because we know that at the x-intercepts, y is equal to 0, we can replace y with 0 and then set ourselves up an equation. And once we've set up the equation, we can use the quadratic formula to solve it. Okay, so our equation always has to be in this form, right, where ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 in order to be able to use the quadratic formula. So the first thing that we want to do is figure out what our a, b's, and c's are. And our a is always in front of x squared, so our a is the number, so a equals negative 2. All right, our b is always the number in front of the x term, so in this case, b equals 3. And then our c is always the constant on the end, so our c is also equal to 3. So once I know what my a, b, and c are, I can go ahead and put them into the formula. A lot of people wonder what the plus and minus is. It's because we really have two formulas. We have x1 equals negative b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, and then we have x2 equals negative b minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And because we don't want to write the formula out twice as mathematicians, right? If we had to write it out like the whole thing out 2 times, feels like a lot of work. So we put this plus minus in until the end, and then at the very end we separate it out. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to write x equals negative. Now my b is 3, so I'm just going to put the 3 there, and then I have plus or minus, and then I'm going to do my big square root. So b squared, so 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 2, times c, which is 3, and all of that is over 2 times a, which is negative 2. So b is positive 3, b is 3, a is negative 2, c is 3, and a is negative 2. So once I've gone ahead and substituted, then I can just start working through the math. So I want to follow BEDMAS rules, so I have to do everything in the under the square root first. So if I go ahead and grab my trusty calculator, right, and try and do that math, okay, so I do 3 y to the x squared minus 4 times negative 2 times 3, and that equals 33. And then I can do 2 times negative 2, which is negative 4. So now that I've got it in this form, I can split it out into 2 parts. Okay, so I'm just going to do the rest of it over here. So my first x is equal to negative 3 plus the square root of 33 over 4, okay? And my second x-intercept is equal to negative 3 minus the square root of 33 over 4. And if the question says leave as exact roots, okay, then this is exact because we haven't had to change anything. So if I take what I've just done, so I have -3 plus, to get the square root, I hit second pi, 33. Now I have to hit equals here because this whole thing is being divided by 4. So I can't just do a divided by 4 now because it would follow BEDMAS rules and it would only divide the square root of 33 by 4. So I'm going to hit enter and then I'm going to divide by 4 and you'll notice that I get 0.6861. So approximately equal to 0.6861. I've had to round it, right, because it actually keeps going. So I've rounded it, so that means it's approximate. So if it asks for exact roots, this would be exact because you haven't had to round it, okay? This would be approximate. So be really careful about what the question is asking. All right, and so then this would be my other root, and once again I can throw it into the calculator. And I get -3 minus the square root of 33, and then I divide that by 4, and so my other x-intercept would be at -2.1861. Oops, and I just use these these wavy equal signs because I'm recognizing that it's an approximate answer and not an exact answer. So if you put this in the calculator and you get a decimal that, right, doesn't end, then you want to, and it's asked for exact, then don't bother putting it in the calculator. Just stop here. Anyway, that is the quadratic formula.